Today I will be writing a villanelle. A villanelle is a type of poem that is 19 lines long. It consists of 5 tercets, which is a 3-line stanza, and it ends with a quatrain, which is a 4-line stanza. There's a very specific repetition and rhyme pattern, but there's no rhythm you have to worry about, so no pentameters or anything like that. So an example of a villanelle would be a very famous one is by Dylan Thomas. It's called Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words have forked into lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So, in order to write our own, I think the first thing to do is to figure out what we're going to write about. I decided an easy topic, something that's on all of our minds, is COVID-19, the coronavirus. So, in order to go about writing, the first thing I did was I wrote out all of the lines, 1 all the way down to 19, which works. And the next thing I am doing for me and my organizational purposes is I'm going to go next to all of them and write down the rhyme pattern. So for this type of poem, there's just an A-B kind of rhyme scheme. So what that would look like is your first line will match your third line, your second line will match the next second line, since these are in tercets. But at the end, with the quatrain, the last 2 lines are both A. They're going to rhyme themselves. Now, what's left is to fill in these lines that we have. I have my little map made out for me, just for organization. And now it's time to write the poem. So my first line, I decided, we fear COVID-19. I'm going to underline the COVID-19 because that's the 19. That is my last word, so that's what I need to rhyme with and then third line. For the second line, it's going to have to end with a different word that doesn't rhyme with the first one. So, germs. Germs has a lot of rhymes, I think. I'm sure I can come up with some. Cowering from the germs. And I'll underline that one with a different color. And for the third line of this first stanza, we need to go back to rhyming with that first line. And with that, so I need to find a rhyme for 19, COVID-19. And I think a very fitting one is quarantine. So we hide in quarantine. I do not know how to spell. So it's a little backwards because I don't have anything better to record with. But we fear COVID-19, cowering from the germs, and then we hide in quarantine. The 19 and the quarantine, they rhyme. Now it's time to start the second stanza. And that's also going to match our A pattern, which is the 19 and the quarantine. We must practice perfect hygiene. Hygiene being my next word in the pattern. And now I need to find a rhyme for germs. Stern. Okay. We must practice perfect hygiene even if the rules are stern. At the end of the stanza is when the repetition comes in. It's going to get a little crazy. So the last line of this stanza is actually going to be the first line of the first stanza, being "We fear COVID-19." So how that reads so far: we fear COVID-19, cowering from the germs, we hide in quarantine. We must practice perfect hygiene, even if the rules are stern, we fear COVID-19. Now we go on to the third stanza, which will do something similar, but I will let you know when we get there. So for the next line, I started it, don't forget social distancing, which also goes with the 19. Safety is a big concern, which rhymes with my germs and stern. And this time, I'm going to end this stanza with the third line of the first stanza, which was we hide in quarantine. So it reads now, we fear COVID-19, cowering from the germs, we hide in quarantine. We must practice perfect hygiene, even if the rules are stern, we fear COVID-19. Don't forget social distancing, safety is a big concern, so we hide in quarantine. The next two stanzas will go pretty similarly as those first two stanzas that I just did. I went ahead and I wrote those next two stanzas going with the pattern so far. So in my fourth stanza, I decided to rhyme COVID-19 with clean, and then my germs with urns. And in my fifth stanza, sanitizing is rhyming with quarantine, and then my next germs line would be curve. So this reads, we fear COVID-19, cowering from the germs, we hide in quarantine. We must practice perfect hygiene, even if the rules are stern, we fear COVID-19. Don't forget social distancing, safety is a big concern, so we hide in quarantine. Panicked about staying clean, so we don't end up in urns, we fear COVID-19. A nation obsessed with sanitizing, we need to flatten the curve, so we hide in quarantine. The next two lines, so in our final stanza, the first two lines are going to go with that same A-B pattern. So I need to come up with one more rhyme with 19 and one more rhyme with my germs from the beginning, which I'm going to go with unease and confirmed. I will write that out real quick. And the last two lines of the stanza and the whole poem are going to be the first line and the third line from the very beginning. So the whole thing now, we fear COVID-19, cowering from the germs, we hide in quarantine. We must practice perfect hygiene, even if the rules are stern, we fear COVID-19. Don't forget about social distancing, safety is a big concern, so we hide in quarantine. Panicked about staying clean, so we don't end up in urns, we fear COVID-19. A nation obsessed with sanitizing, we need to flatten the curve, so we hide in quarantine. Living in a state of general unease, hoping no more cases are confirmed, we fear COVID-19, hiding in quarantine. So I would definitely encourage you to give it a try. It's pretty fun. It's a little difficult to find so many rhymes and getting the general idea, but once you have it mapped out, it's pretty easy just to fill in the blanks. So that is how you write a villanelle.